News Desk, I am Akisa Wandera. We're still on our top story at this hour. Director of Public Prosecutions Nordin Haji has approved the prosecution of Busia Governor Sospeter Ojaamong for abuse of office and flouting procurement procedures. The DPP is recommending several charges, including conspiracy to commit an offense of economic crime, engaging in a project without proper planning, abuse of office, willful failure to comply with law relating to management of funds, and fraudulent acquisition of a public property. Ojaamong will be charged alongside 9 others who are Timon Otieno Mboga, Bernard Crad Yaite, among others, most of whom are officials in the county government of Busia. What we know currently is that the governor, Sospeter Ojaamong, is just about to address members of the press, of course, giving his side of the story on these allegations that have been fronted, not just against him, but 9 others. Our reporter, Willie Lusige, is in Budalangi. Once the governor speaks, we will definitely be bringing you those proceedings live. But for now, I want us to take a look at who are the 9 others who will be charged alongside Sospeter Ojaamong over that particular 8 million waste management project. Let's quickly take a look at who they are, what the role they play in the county government. Sospeter Ojaamong Odeke, definitely the governor of Busia County. Number 1 on that list from the Director of Public Prosecutions, Timon Otieno Mboga, was the chief officer in the environment docket in between 2013 and 2017. That was the first term or the first government of Sospeter Ojaamong. A very critical docket with regard to this particular scandal facing that county and the governor currently. Bernard Crad Yaite is the chief executive officer of Youth, Sports, Tourism, Culture and Social currently. Leonard Wanda Obimbira is the CEC for Finance, Economic Planning and ICT. This is a position he as well held in the previous government of Sospeter Ojaamong, and this is not one of the cases facing him against the with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. There are severally written letters to the county of Busia with regard to that particular case. Samuel Osiako Mbui is the chief accountant at the Busia County government. Alan Okweny Omachari is the chief officer for finance and ICT. Once again, a position he held in the previous county government as well of Sospeter Ojaamong. Madam R Enterprises Limited, the ones who are said to have partnered with Busia County in that particular 8 million shilling project. Edna Adhiambo Odoyo, as well as Renish Adhiambo Omolo. And what we can report now, what we know so far is the 2, Edna and Renish, have a pending case in court as well. On defrauding Moslo Limited, a case for about 6 million Kenya shillings. They have a pending case in court on the same, and as well as Sebastian Halsleben. These are the 9 others who will be charged alongside Governor Sospeter Ojaamong in this particular case. The DPP has officially ordered for the arrest and prosecution of the 9 led by Sospeter Ojaamong. Like I mentioned earlier, the governor is expected to address members of the press just to get his side of the story and understand what is going to be his next course of action with regard to this particular case. Corruption cases have been taking most of the time for Kenyans currently. We are dealing with the NYS scandal, we are dealing with the maize scandal, fertilizer scandal, sugar probe, and now we've taken it down to the county of Busia. Joining me in studio now, Steve Ogola, a lawyer, to just help us appreciate what direction this war is taking with regards to this latest scenario. Thank you very much, Steve. Always a pleasure to have you here on KTN News Desk. What do you think about this latest case?
First of all, I hope that the governor in his press address does not touch on the case as it were, because the case will not be litigated in the public, and I want to sensitize the public, especially residents of Busia County, that what the governor is going to say in the press statement is inconsequential insofar as prosecution is concerned. Maybe just to allay the fears that the county will be dysfunctional as a consequence of this case. So he will continue to serve, and if he's arraigned in court, he'll be probably granted bail. So maybe what he can do in the interim before now and the time he's arrested is that he can go and apply for anticipatory bail, bail pending arrest, indicating that he's reasonably apprehensive that he may be arrested. Because the ODPP has already cleared charges to be preferred against him. But then if he's able to present himself in court, then there will be no need to arrest him. He can be bonded, and he can make himself available in court. But looking at the case as it were, I've picked out one of those two charges.
Yes.
Conspiracy to defraud and abuse of office. Conspiracy is probably more difficult to establish because it requires criminal intent that co-opts each and every person, all the accused persons. You must show that they acted collectively in a manner that was intended to benefit someone else and to the disadvantage of the county and the public. But abuse of office, if you look at the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, corruption is defined to include abuse of office. So yes, these are corruption charges. Corruption need not to occur if money has been lost. Sometimes money may not have been lost, but you used your office to influence how money is applied. Now that is abuse of office. And I think right now, looking at the strategy of the ODPP, the new Director of Public Prosecution, I don't think he carries malice. He's very focused and he's steady. He must have reviewed, and because the law requires him to have what is called sound prosecutorial judgment, meaning assessing the evidence on record and determining whether this can sustain a conviction if left unchallenged. So I'm sure he's assessed that, and if he's preferring charges, this is not one of those cases that you can say is reactionary because the president has said so. So I would just hope that the governor and the entire team, his team, be more concerned about how to build a legal defense to these charges. Yes.
There are other charges like willful failure to comply with the law relating to management of funds, as well as fraudulent acquisition of public property. A number of them you've touched on conspiracy to commit economic crime and abuse of office. What do you think about these other charges?
I think those charges may be merited in the context of how we know our governance systems. We do know that governors manipulate the law, not just governors, all state and public officers. The incentive to manipulate and misapply the law is almost always irresistible. So I would be very concerned if the ODPP frames charges that includes failing to comply with the law. Because then it's very easy in this Kenya, in this country, if you look at our approach to governance, people look at the law and say, how can I circumvent the law? How can I innovate outside the law to direct public funds one way or another? So I think what is comforting for us to know is that, yes, there's some decisive action by the ODPP to deal with corruption, even if it's just 8 million. That sends a very strong positive signal. The political and symbolic communication coming from this prosecution is that, listen, it doesn't matter who you are, you're not immune to accountability in court. So I think that's okay, but the nitty-gritty of the case, we'll have to wait to see the evidence that the ODPP has assessed and see how it is presented. One can only hope that the prosecution of these cases, because they involve high-profile persons, people who are in charge of public administration, I hope the ODPP will deploy competent, experienced, well-experienced prosecutors to come, state councils, to deal with these cases so that they are not bungled at trial, because that is, again, the other risk.
There's a question of Chapter 7, integrity.
Yes,
But is it possible to see a Kenyan from Busia County or elsewhere asking that the governor steps down because he's facing these charges now?
I wish you could reach that level, but in 2012, already the president and deputy president, they already set the bar too high and the court brought it too low. The president was set in the sense that the court was of the view that the presumption of innocence overrides provisions of the leadership and integrity provision, Chapter 6, because then, insofar as these charges have not been established, charges are only established upon conviction. So for now, they carry along the presumption of innocence, and if somebody moves to court to test their suitability, for sure, I think there should be a lower threshold in terms of establishing whether someone is really fit to serve. The moment the ODPP, acting in good faith, as is required by law to do so, finds that there is evidence, if left unchallenged, that the law was not followed, or maybe there was abuse of office, then already there's a significant breach of trust. So that breach of trust is there. The only reason why now we are unable to apply it fully is because of the presumption of innocence provisions, which then seeks to protect people from witch hunt. In the future, not just in this case, in the future, maybe you may have a rogue ODPP who may want to pander to a particular political side. So then if you allow people if charges are framed, preferred against people, and then you ask them to step aside, one way of dealing with political detractors and competitors would be to frame charges against them, and then have them to resign. So that is the only limitation. Otherwise, this is a good case of a governor stepping aside, resigning. In the West, where people value a perception about the office, because you see, the perception will not go away. In this durational period when the governor is facing these charges, the perception that he may have falsified the law, he may have abused the office, will not go away. And the most honorable thing was for him to reflect, to own up. Part of what he could do is like, listen, away from the criminal trial process, I own up that there may have been some mistake. That doesn't mean that I'm guilty, but I own up to this and this, and we are working towards correcting it. I think that can work, but knowing our politicians as we do, it's a very unlikely that someone will own up.
Quite rare around this part of the world. But you say that whatever Sospeter Ojaamong is expected to address members of the press from Budalangi, you say that will be completely inconsequential. What do we expect to see with regards to this case in the coming days?
Well, what we expect to see in court is the evidence coming out, because otherwise the ODP runs the risk of demoralizing Kenyans, and also maybe the backlash that is witch hunting. When you hold someone like a governor to court, you really must be very sure that you have credible evidence that can stand the interrogation of the court. So we can pray and hope that he has that evidence, and if he has that evidence, and that's what I was saying, then it doesn't really matter what Ojaamong says in his press conference. What he could say is to allay fears that the county is going to be paralyzed. Governance will continue as he battles this case, as has been the case with the president and the deputy president when they were facing charges at the Hague. But in terms of the strategy, the litigation strategy, what he needs is in the back-end processes to build up a robust legal team that can then defray these charges, that can then deal with these charges. Otherwise, if he's convicted, then for sure now he'll be found to be unfit. I think in the first term, we are yet to see a governor having been convicted of abuse of office. But if there can be a conviction of abuse of office, then the natural consequence of that conviction is that now someone, a Busia resident, would move to court to find that the governor is indeed incapable or unsuitable of holding that office, and an election would have to ensue because of that.
What are your thoughts about generally how the war on corruption, the direction it's taking currently?
I think there's hope, because we can see new vigor. There's some energy. The ODP has brought some energy, and because of the corruption, as we have said, combating corruption is a question of perception.
Yes.
And we can see that there is significant movement within the political elite, especially the president, in terms of saying that he's going to hold everyone accountable. And president being the head of the government and the public sector, and we're talking about public sector corruption, so his statements really really reassuring. And if you match that with the actions by the Director of Public Prosecution, we can say that in terms of disrupting corruption networks, because corruption is fought by 3 levels. You have disruptive measures, you have preventive measures, then you have punitive measures. So I think already if you look at both disruptive, punitive, and also preventive measures collectively, I think Kenya is at a good place, and if they maintain the momentum, corruption will slow down.
Thank you very much for joining us here in studio. Steve Ogola is a lawyer just helping us appreciate what we are likely to see in this case now surrounding or against the governor for Busia, Sospeter Ojaamong, and 4 others who are working in the county of Busia. Let's listen now to Governor Sospeter Ojaamong addressing members of the press with regards to this case. He's speaking in Budalangi. Let's go over there live.